The mystery surrounding Nolan Wells remains unresolved, with few more answers available to the public now than there were when his disappearance first became known. Mississippi has still not publicly released the state autopsy results. Toxicology findings remain undisclosed. The Oceanic Review requested by attorney Ben Crump has yet to produce publicly available conclusions, and Crump's team has not publicly settled questions surrounding the authenticity or analysis of the MBMR audio. But while the official investigation remains shrouded in unanswered questions, another trial has been unfolding in full view of the public, one fought through headlines, social media, and public speculation. Lauren Hudson, Jax Patalo, and Morgan Seymour continue to maintain their innocence publicly, alongside their attorney. According to their position, they do not know what happened to Nolan. And with key investigative findings still unreleased, the question of what actually happened during those missing hours remains open.
We don't know how Nolan Wells died. No one here is saying we know.
He says the evidence tells a clear story, one he believes establishes that his 3 clients were not involved in whatever ultimately happened to Nolan Wells.
Anybody who is thinking for 1 second about suing these fine young men, these good Ocean Springs people, you're going to pay their attorney's fees. You're going to lose. You're going to get annihilated. You're going to get crushed. You have nothing. And here's the beauty of it. We know you have nothing because we actually have the evidence. We know what.
But if Hudson, Patalo, and Seymour are truly removed from the list of possible suspects, the focus inevitably shifts toward the other people who may have been in the position to see what happened. According to Warren's account, that brings attention to the caller who is believed to be Wyatt, another name connected to the timeline whose potential knowledge of those critical moments raises an entirely different set of questions.
Wyatt called Cito.
Said that there were 7 people on the boat.
Is there a living person, someone breathing on the boat? Is there anybody on the boat?
Yes, there's lots of people breathing on the boat.
All right, how many people, sir?
Yet the enhanced recording appears to tell a different story. In the audio, a voice can reportedly be heard counting what sounds like 8 people, a detail that immediately raises questions about who else may have been present during those critical moments.
7 people. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
That apparent mismatch creates yet another unresolved issue. If the recording really captures 8 people being counted, then who exactly was aboard the boat at that point in the timeline? And that question becomes even more complicated when the recording itself is examined. Bart Edmondson's attorney Russell Latino has reportedly questioned whether the audio now being circulated can be definitively established as the original recording. If its authenticity remains uncertain, and determining what the audio actually proves becomes another unanswered piece of the investigation.
Conversation from the sweetened audio, where there's one voice calling Cito, I have an account.
Cito Assistance, Vicky speaking. How can I help you?
What is your position on the veracity of that sweetened audio?
That audio gets released by the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources. A version of it, it's not clear that that was the original audio. And then people take it and try and pick it apart.
So consider what that would imply. ABC, TMZ, and WLOX, the Mississippi news station, reportedly obtained versions of the recording said to have originated with the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources. If questions remain over whether the circulating file is actually the original, that naturally opens a much larger issue. What happened to the recording before it reached the public, and can its chain of custody be fully established? At the same time, portions of the audio appear to line up with at least part of the account offered by Bart Edmonston's attorney. In particular, the recording has been cited in connection with the claim that Bart pulled the transom plug from the boat, adding another layer to the debate over what the audio can actually confirm.
Afternoon, one of the boats experienced some problems with its bilge pump and started taking on water. One of the individuals on that boat called my client and asked for help. He proceeded to give help, in part by getting on the transom of the boat and helping to remove the plug at the back of the transom of that boat. For people that don't boat, that may not make, that may not be something they understand, but literally they were just opening up a hole so water would drain out is the short way of saying this.
Jump in and pull the plug, Bart, while you're going.
And then my client got back on the boat that he was piloting and towed the other vessel for a short distance, allowing that water to run off.
However, the accounts of who was actually aboard the boat do not all match. Different attendees have provided differing descriptions of the people present, creating another inconsistency in a timeline where even small discrepancies could matter.
We moved all the weight to the front of the boat so we could, we stopped at one point. My buddy pulled the plug out the boat, got back in the boat, the captain of the boat, got in the water, pulled the plug out the boat, got back in the boat, and hit it.
Like when we're talking about the aid that my client provided to the distressed vessel, it wasn't way out in the water. It literally was while they were still anchored next to Horn Island.
Right, it looks like you're on Horn Island, correct? Are you
Yes,
on
we are
Horn
at Horn
Island?
Island. Yes.
All right, is the boat sinking or you have it aground?
We were sinking, yes.
Is it aground is the question?
No, we're not aground. We are in
Okay.
17 foot of water. We're in 31 foot of water.
All right, have to ask.
So
Understood.
you're talking about dozens of people that saw what happened there.
Understood, which makes sense because an experienced boater, which these kids are, they go to the island all the time, they fish all the time, they're around boats. You don't take off if you're taking on water.
Well, then eventually my buddy Bart on the tide line is like, I'm going to pull y'all out to where we're out of all this, all this chaos. Because we left at 4:30 and there were still just as many people there, if not more, than when we got there. We got towed probably a quarter mile. Like I said, my buddy Bart drove his boat up next to ours after he pulled us out away from the island. And then he towed us a little more while we were trying to get the motor figured out.
You don't take off if you're taking on water.
Boat wasn't having a bilge pump or bilge pump issue. It says verbatim, we have an issue where we have finally trimmed down the boat and got it on the right plane. That they all moved to one side of the boat. When you trim down the motor to get it on the right plane, that means that you drop the bow. This is how you are supposed to get the actual boat from being completely still to an accelerated speed fast. That they left the trim down when trying to accelerate off the island at a very fast speed, and this is what blew the bilge pump. If the trim is not up when you try to take down, it causes water to back up in the bilge. The trim is left up, the bow shoots high into the air during acceleration, forcing all loose bilge water to rush to the very back of the hull. This is why they all tried to do the emergency mover where they move forward.
And we planed off. We moved all the weight to the front of the boat so we could plane off.
This traps water in the boat and specifically at the bilge pump. Did an emergency remover that everyone knows about, and this fucked up the bilge pump and it started to take on water. Bilge pump wasn't an issue until they made it a quarter mile offshore, like he said, at 40 miles per hour, because they didn't take the emergency brake, and the maneuver that they used to try to get the bow back up fucked everything up on the boat.
I mean, the motor would trim down. So then eventually, and the motor wouldn't trim down. And so eventually we figured out if you held the manual trim on the motor will stay in the water even when you start to accelerate. Because when my buddy would put the boat in gear and forward, the motor would come right back up.
Question is, what type of panic or event ensued that y'all were moving so fast? The boys who've known boats since they were children.
Was an experienced boater, which these kids are. They go to the island all the time, they fish all the time, they're around boats.
That y'all forgot to do the simplest thing when trying to accelerate from a stop on a boat that everyone knows when you're speeding, like they said, at 40 miles per hour. Something happened to cause enough chaos for them to fuck that.
Meanwhile, outside the formal investigation, another kind of courtroom has been operating nonstop, the court of public opinion. And from the defense side, the narrative has been presented with increasing force. Attorneys, friends, relatives, and other people familiar with those involved have stepped forward with their own accounts of that day, offering explanations for what they believe happened and challenging parts of the story circulating publicly. But with so many competing versions now entering the conversation, one question becomes harder to ignore: which details can actually be supported by evidence?
It came to me of someone saying that they saw Nolan with a girl, and they believed that they saw Nolan and this girl struggling in the water, not necessarily drowning, but struggling. Like it was obvious enough that the person was concerned when they saw Nolan in the water, and he was with this girl. But you got to replay this moment with thousands of people here. If anything would have happened directly involving Nolan and his friends, you can't tell me that thousands of people wouldn't have seen anything happen.
You know, that's from Officer Tatum's show. Cheryl McCollum, it seems to me that that's not true. Because don't you think if a witness saw one or two people, quote, struggling in the water, I mean, I would try to help them.
It makes no sense.
And they did nothing?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. That wouldn't be their focal, that they would pay attention to those two people that are struggling to see, is one going under and not resurfacing? What can we do to help? The idea that they would watch that, see a struggle, and then what? Turn back and finish barbecuing? That doesn't make any sense to me at all.
The Officer Tatum on it, and you see a quick glimpse of that boat. Well, I have the full video. And the only reason that I don't want to put the video out and the lawyers are against it, because there's other people that's not involved in this that are featured on the video.
Was Nolan Wells on the boat?
No, he's not on the boat. And the pan, let me tell you, it's interesting, right? These kids, this is my perception for what I see on the boat. They're having a good time. I would argue that some of them are having such a good time that half of the people are concerned and half of the people don't know what's going on. There's two boats. There's the boat that Bart is running to tow, and there's the boat that Warren and them are on. And some people are having such a good time that they're like joking about it. They're not even thinking it is happening. And then you have, Warren's side or Wyatt's side where I can see Wyatt on the phone talking to Cito.
Cito Assistance, Vicky speaking. How can I help you?
What did we just hear? What was that?
Nolan is nowhere to be found. No activity is really going on the other boat.
So you don't see any corresponding activity that would suggest the urgency and the dialogue that is in the transcript of the sweetened audio?
No, there's a girl on that boat that's yelling because she's having a good time and she's screaming and she's talking loud and whatever. And I don't know if that translated to the phone call because she's on the opposite boat. And at one point in the video, the boats are together like this. Because people are trying to get on this boat to the other boat and do all that.
I am hearing from sources that I will protect close to the investigation that the investigators do have more information from their autopsy. You have also heard that they know things about the first autopsy.
There are things that I know that I think the average person doesn't know.
I think there are things that I know that the average person doesn't know that are not points of speculation. One, that they found evidence of water in tissue and cavities consistent with drowning. What that means investigatively is still open to interpretation. The toxicology early on shows a significant level of blood alcohol, the BAC level, as they call it in the body. You have also heard that. Am I correct, counsel?
I'm going to wait till the pathologist puts out the report, and I'm going to wait till the district attorney puts out.
There is little doubt that the speculation will continue. But as the case develops and new disputes emerge, another concern is becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. How much of the truth will the public ever actually be allowed to see? When the audio first surfaced, many people viewed it as potentially decisive, a recording that could dramatically reshape the direction of the investigation. Now, that confidence has been replaced by questions. Its interpretation is being disputed, and attorneys and media outlets have raised concerns about whether the version circulating publicly can be established as the original. At the same time, much of the public conversation appears to be shifting toward Nolan himself, his alleged drinking, his behavior that day, and the decisions he was reportedly making the hours before his death. Attorneys and character witnesses continue offering explanations in defense of the young men who were with him. But none of those arguments by themselves answer the central question: what actually happened to Nolan? Until the state autopsy and toxicology results are made public, until the audio receives a definitive forensic analysis, until the Oceanic Review produces findings, and until investigators can establish a complete and reliable timeline, the gaps will remain. And as more competing narratives enter the conversation, the case seems to be moving toward a point where the biggest question may no longer be what people believe happened, but what can ultimately be proven.
You lied about my guys, you lied about Tyler's guys here. If you lied about Morgan, if you lied about Jax, if you lied about Warren, we're going to get you. And you're going to be hauled into court, you're going to be held accountable, and it's going to be very painful. And what I would say to the people who have done that is, now's your chance. If you want to apologize and retract before you find yourself in court, you should probably do that now. Because if you don't do that, once you're in court, Now you can't leave. Now you can't leave.
Warren Hudson, Eli Jax Patello, and Morgan Seymour have now brought in high-profile defamation and media attorney Edward Andrew Pollock, who has previously represented President Donald Trump in major litigation involving media organizations. Pollock, working alongside Mississippi attorney J. Tyler Cox, is now representing the three young men as they respond to the growing accusations, public scrutiny, and speculation surrounding Nolan Wells' death. With the case increasingly being fought not only through the investigation but also in the public arena, your legal team appears determined to challenge the claims being made about them.
How do you think this should have gone? If you could control the environment, Nolan is found deceased. How do you guys think that this should have been put out to the world?
So first off, I wish that none of this would ever happen. I wish Nolan could still be here with us today. And I wish that, like I said, none of this would ever happen. Like, I wish that all this could be erased and Nolan could be here tomorrow. I mean, that's more than anything. But other than that, I feel like his mom blasting us on social media from the get-go, saying that he was out there with Warren and another guy. That's where it first started to take off. And then also the fact that she posted a picture of me and Morgan and another guy and Nolan on the boat together, blasting that out there, pushing this narrative, kind of, I guess. I wish that would have never happened either. And I don't think if those would have never happened, a lot of this stuff wouldn't have been as viral or gone all over the country at this point. I mean, this is a countrywide news story that is just blown out of proportion. And the fact that it was our best friend and it's not what people are saying it is what hurts the most. I mean, that was our brother. I mean, straight up. That's what I told his dad the night that he came over to my house. He was like, blah, blah, saying something. I was like, dude, that was my brother. Like, and you know that. He knows that. We were picking him up every single day. He never drove.
In the pictures, when he came out of the room, half asleep or whatever, I think Jax or whatever. And I said, look, I'm Nolan's father. I'm here to get his keys so I can get his car. I said, he's like,
his car was in the yard.
His car was parked in the yard. So he was like, I don't know, man. Nolan's like my brother. I said, well, if Nolan was like your brother, would you please go in your room and see if you can find my son's keys so I can take his car home? He walks off, 2 or 3 minutes, come back. I can't find the keys. I said, okay.
His keys were not on the boat because his car was parked at my buddy's house where we had all slept, the night before the 4th. And so the keys were left at the house because Nolan's car was at my buddy's house where we stayed at. I wish we would have never, I think about this every day. Like, I wish we would have never went out on the 4th of July because I know this wouldn't have happened. Nolan wouldn't be gone. And it's really hard to think about because it's like, I wish I would have done this different, or I wish I would have done that different, because now one of my brothers wouldn't have passed away. But I think from the beginning, I'm glad that I called the Coast Guard, and I'm glad that we came together as a group, even from the first day when people started texting us things, saying, crazy things. But I wish it wouldn't have been reported as some type of race thing. I think it's really bad that people are pushing the narrative, oh, this is a race thing. Well, obviously it's not. I mean, this is like a brother to us. I mean, Nolan's no different than anyone else in our group. And I just wish this wasn't pushed on the media as, oh, this is a bunch of white guys that killed a black guy, or this is in the beginning it was like 4 guys went to a stranded island and dumped Nolan at the island and just left him there. Like, even from the beginning, it was just like this thing, and no one had facts, and they were just pushing this horrible narrative, all lies about everyone, and it's sick. So I wish that would have been completely different. I'm glad I called the Coast Guard. I'm glad I made the first contact within all of this. I'm glad I was the first one that called Christine Wells that night and told her that we haven't heard from her son. And I'm glad that I did all of that, but I hate the way this has been perceived by the media and portrayed. This has been absolutely horrible with the way and the things that they've said to us. and done. But other than that, I mean, there's not much I would change from my point of view and my friend's point of view. I think we did everything right, and I know we did nothing wrong.
In my view, one of the biggest reasons public suspicion began turning toward Nolan's friends was what happened in the immediate aftermath of his disappearance. While Nolan's mother was publicly pleading for answers, asking people to help locate her son, and appearing increasingly desperate for information, the young men who had been with Nolan that day seemed far less visible. Some social media accounts were reportedly deleted or became unavailable, and to many observers, there was no comparable public campaign from the group urging people to help find Nolan. Then there was another detail that quickly became part of the public conversation. Nolan, a black teenager, was the one who disappeared while spending time with a predominantly white group, and who was the person who never made it home. On top of that, speculation spread that the young men had already obtained legal representation, but none of those circumstances, individually or collectively, established that anyone committed a crime or played a role in Nolan's death. People can delete social media, avoid public statements, or hire attorneys for entirely legitimate reasons, particularly when an intensely scrutinized case suddenly becomes national news. Still, perception has its own momentum. Those actions created an information vacuum, and the public quickly began filling that space with questions, theories, and suspicion. At the same time, law enforcement was publicly indicating that, at least in those early stages, there was no apparent reason to believe Nolan had been the victim of foul play. That created a striking disconnect. Authorities were essentially telling the public that there was no clear evidence of something criminal, while the behavior being watched online was causing many people to wonder whether there was more to the story. And that gap between what officials were saying became one of the defining forces behind the case's explosion in the court of public opinion.
Officer Tatum has once again returned to Mississippi to interview the young men that were with Nolan Wells on the day he went missing and then ultimately was found deceased. There's a lot in this interview that I want to get into and break down, so let's get into it.
What is your thoughts on that phone call to Cito? Some people have gone out and done enhancements to the audio, and in doing that, created a transcript manually. It doesn't appear that the transcript was derived from an automated system or have any, in my opinion, real integrity with it. So what do you guys think about that audio?
From this very first question, I start wondering, is ex-Officer Tatum being paid by the attorneys that represent these young men or the young men's families themselves? Because that is a question that is very loaded, and it's leading towards innocence. It lets the interviewees know that the interviewer has a bias, and thus it's more about getting out a narrative than of finding the truth. Now, I want to be clear. I do not know what these boys did or did not do, but when you release videos like this, you open yourselves up to a certain level of scrutiny that was not there before. And that question doesn't sound like you are interested in an unbiased answer. You ask the question in a biased way that makes the interviewees feel more comfortable.
Well, I can go ahead and say that as you posted that clip of all of us on the boat, you know, as it's rolling, not rolling, but right there sitting in the water, Wyatt's on the phone with Cito in that clip. I mean, he's on the phone. Wouldn't you think that you would have seen Nolan on the bottom of on the floor or something, or scrambling around, or everybody in a pot, like in a small space on the boat looking at him?